Okay, well, I want to thank you guys for coming in today. I understand that you actually did do your homework from last week.
Yeah,
Thank you very much
yeah,
for
we
doing
did.
that. And I'm seeing here that a couple of the things that you agreed on to create this ideal marriage is no crosstalk for at least 5 minutes per person a day. Just kind of relax and sort of speak to one another, explain whatever it is that you wanted to say without getting cut off.
Correct.
And then also, you want to spend quality time with one another doing something that each of you enjoys doing, which I understand is eating out.
Yeah.
Okay.
We like to eat.
Okay. Don't we all? And then also, you mentioned that you would like to pray together on a daily basis, and then that you wanted it not just to be Rick praying, but then also to hear from you, Sarah, which is really encouraging.
Well, I think Rick would like that. I normally just let Rick pray, and I
Okay.
don't really engage, just because it's usually late, and it's like, well, let's just get to sleep,
Sure.
So anyway, but it's harder for me to pray out loud, so it'll be a challenge.
Okay, and that's something that you guys agreed to compromise on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll try it.
Wow, that's pretty exciting.
We haven't done it yet.
Okay, but the time will come.
Yeah.
Today, I was wondering if you'd be willing to try kind of an experiment for me. We've talked a little bit about communication. I mean, you mentioned the no cross-talking, so it seems like you guys are already thinking in that direction of how to communicate better with one another. So let's see if we could just try something. We're going to call it a controlled fire, okay?
Okay.
And can you think of something perhaps that you discussed, this week that maybe you didn't finish discussing, or something that's just kind of been bothering you a little bit, and you want to finish this conversation? And I'm going to be sitting here observing, and I'm going to ask you to both just be kind to one another, and if you can just present your argument clearly and with a lack of poisonous barbs, maybe. And so, yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and try that right now.
Yeah, I would say that that's kind of an issue. Um, um, I mean, I just find it kind of comical that your mother is 97 and has a car, but she doesn't drive. And I think I don't know, it's more of a statement to me that how important your family is to you. And I don't know, somehow that just doesn't really set right with me. There's a lot of people that really could use a car that don't have a car. And then she has this perfectly new little car that sits in her garage, just so in case somebody wants to drive her somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you explain it, I understand your frustration, but I think from my perspective, I felt like she needed her independence, and she likes it when the women that take her to get her hair done, or take her to the doctor's office, or take her on errands to go grocery shopping, she likes not to have them take their car.
But
she likes to have that availability. She likes to have the availability when they take her to the airport, when she goes to visit my brothers, that she doesn't have to ask them to use their car. So, I mean, I understand your frustration, but I've tried to, as you know, and has frustrated you on other issues, I've tried to supply for my family most of my adult life.
I think, though, with the car, I mean, that is true. You've provided way above and beyond. But I think the car issue is a pride issue for your mom, because she doesn't want to drive around in a car that isn't clean, that isn't nice, and she wouldn't know what the caregivers were going to drive. So I think, is a pride issue. But then she's 97. Maybe that's okay.
Well, I would agree with you that it probably is. There probably is a certain degree of pride involved on her part. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to knock the pride out of her at 97.
You got her to come to the Lord. How old was she then?
94.
94. Yeah. But I guess, I mean, I just agree to disagree on it. I mean, I just, I never could see the logic. I mean, we have family members that don't have the greatest vehicles, and so and even sometimes when I've asked to borrow it, I've had family members that haven't had a car. I felt like that you reluctantly let my brother drive it. And it was kind of like, really? It's sitting there. And her caregivers have vehicles, and they can take her. Now, I will say that you did let me do it, but it was like I was asking for your right arm.
But I gave you my right arm.
Right. So, but anyway, I mean, maybe it's an issue we can never really resolve. But I just thought maybe by talking about it that, we could come to a better place with it.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in a better place than we were a few years ago on not maybe this issue, but issues like it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the past, I would just, when you bring them up, I would just stonewall it.
Right.
I just wouldn't talk about it. Just say, "Well, Sarah, that's the way it is."
Right.
And so I think I think God has worked on me and shown me that I need to try to understand your perspective on it and try to come to a point where we can maybe not totally agree, but try to see each other's perspective.
I mean, I guess the one way that I've kind of handled it that has been helpful is that, would I want you to be any other way? Would I want you to be somebody who was not generous and not generous to your family and not, kind to your mother and trying to, give her some dignity still? I think it's a pride issue that she has to have a decent car, but hey, she's 97. So I think for me, it's kind of like, that I try to see it as that, it is a good quality that you try to take care of your family. And I look at it more as a negative, but over the last, how long have I known you? 30 years.
32 years or
You're
so.
probably not going to stop being generous. So anyway, I mean, my goal is for me just to kind of just stop, take a breath, and just kind of what am I grateful for? Well, one of it is that you're a kind, generous person, and that affects your family. So suck it up, Sarah.
Okay, let me stop you right there. So what I'm hearing, Sarah, is that you were a little bit hurt by the fact that Rick seemed to be giving up his right arm by allowing you to use the car, but that also you've come to kind of a view of him as a very generous person toward others.
Right.
And that's good. That's a positive thing that you've been able to replace some of your maybe anger with that view of him as a generous person. Do you think that there is anything there? Perhaps you mentioned your family not having a vehicle and not being able to use the vehicle. And although he did allow you to use the vehicle, is maybe there's still something that's bothering you, that it was such a challenge for you to receive this vehicle from him? What is the root issue there? What do you think that is?
I think the root issue is that his family has been a really big part of his life, and he's always been really generous with all of them. And I think that I always felt like that Rick and I didn't always have the greatest relationship. And so I think that his family, sometimes I felt like they always got the best and I got leftovers.
Okay.
And with his time, not with his money. He took very good care of me and the girls. But I think it goes back to that he has that solid family. He has a family, mom and dad lived together, had a happy marriage, kind of this happy household. Then I had a brother and a mother. So I think sometimes when he was over generous with his family, that I would say it probably goes back to the fact that because I didn't have the finances, I didn't have the family. So I'm kind of like, what am I, chopped liver?
Okay. And how do you feel about that?
Well, I think Sarah, has been able to kind of explain that to me. I think it's made me a little more sensitive.
Okay.
I think in relation to her brother, we bought him a car just recently, so
and that helped. It helped even the playing field
Sure.
a little bit. I mean, it's an odd thing. I mean, Rick's always been really generous with my family. It's not that he hasn't. It's just that for some reason it's always an issue with me.
Okay.
So, I haven't always understood why it's been an issue. I think God is giving me, over the years, more insight and as to wisdom as to why it's an issue, and trying to be more understanding of it,
Sure.
and trying to look for ways to even the playing field so it doesn't seem lopsided to Sarah.
And that's very important, the fact that you're looking at what she feels and taking it seriously. It sounds to me like you guys do a really wonderful job of communicating.
We've had a lot of practice.
Well, I guess so. And even in that little
Yeah.
exchange, nothing was too intense. I could tell that you were upset. I could tell that you still are processing through some of this, but also the fact that you mentioned that you wanted to just agree to disagree. Sometimes that is necessary. A compromise occasionally is just that you will never be fully 100% okay with that, and that's okay. And I think that Rick has mentioned that he just bought your brother a car, and he's paying attention to the fact that maybe things aren't so even all the time.
Right.
And so that's really important. You also mentioned something, Rick, where you said you used to stonewall, and that's actually one of the terms that we're going to learn today.
Wow.
So you're ahead of the curve here. Just if you are communicating with one another, a couple of things that we tend to do when we're upset about something, when we're feeling really intense about it, is to be critical of the other person. And so when you mentioned how generous he was and that's a positive thing you saw, it would be very easy for you to do something else and maybe be critical of the fact that he's always giving to his family, but instead you saw the positive there. So that's just something we want to be careful about, is being very critical of one another right off the bat. And then I didn't, in that argument that you just had, that there was no contempt. You were not contemptuous with one another at all. And that's something also you want to be careful of, is harboring a lot of secret things that you're not communicating to one another, and then that comes out in your argument. And you did a fabulous job of not being contemptuous, and it sounds like you have been talking about this issue over time. The other thing is defensiveness. There was no defensiveness in that argument just there. Rick, you didn't say, you know what, my mom is 97 and we're just going to do whatever it is to make her happy.
But in years past, I've done that.
Yes. So you can tell this is a discussion that you guys have had in the past, and you just, every new thing that comes up, you approach it in a new way. And it sounds like you're using some of the skills that you've learned in the past to address this issue, and that's wonderful. And then the final is the stonewalling, where you change the topic, you put it off, you say, hey, this is just the way it is, or I don't want to talk about this, and then you don't return to the issue. It's fine to put it off for a little bit and say, hey, I need some time to cool off, but it's wonderful that you guys are able to talk about this. So I think we're nearing the end of our time here, but I want to actually give you guys another homework assignment, which it sounds like you're doing well on them, and you're ready.
I love homework.
You love homework. Perfect. Okay. So basically, I'm going to hand you guys a sheet of paper, and it's going to discuss some of the topics that we've talked about already in our previous sessions. And I want you guys to bring up a topic every day and just kind of talk about it. Use some of the things that you talked about. No crosstalk. If you present your side for 5 minutes, you present your side for 5 minutes, and just kind of go through and see what you can learn about that topic for one another. It seems like this is one of your issues that you've done that in the past, because you're really able to communicate on it very well. So let's just look at some of those other topics that we talked about and how difficult they may be. If you're communicating openly and honestly, it would be wonderful.